you're a New York Times reader, an NPR fan, a Daily Wire subscriber, or an avid consumer of all things Tucker Carlson, for several months now, there's been no avoiding the subject of Nick Fuentes. And let's be clear, the main reason you're hearing about him is because he's popular. A large number of people, especially young men, are interested in what he has to say. What that says about our society and our culture is the subject of ferocious debate. For many people, it's a grave indictment of an insidious immorality. For others, he's a product of a culture which has turned on its own and left many young people.
All right, here it is. I'm here to hold your hand through this.
Feeling listless and bitter. He's either a litmus test for right-wing hypocrisy on free speech or a walking, talking manifestation of where the line should be drawn. And a frankly preposterous amount of...
The problem is, right-wingers in general are probably the worst people to take on someone like Nick Fuentes. They are the absolute worst people. Liberals have a hard time combating Nick Fuentes' worldview. They definitely have an easier time combating Nick Fuentes' worldview than right-wingers do, though. Because for a right-wing audience, Nick Fuentes is just a more honest version of what they've been taught all along, what they believe all along. So it's virtually impossible for a right-winger to, I think, successfully dismantle Nick Fuentes' worldview. It's still difficult for a liberal to do so as well, because, you know, at the end of the day, the alternative is still going to be liberalism in their worldview, where they can at least say, like, racism is bad, which is true. Most people will agree with you on that. But if there's one group of people that have an impossible job of dismantling Nick Fuentes' odious worldview, it's going to be a right-winger.
Airtime has been spent on debating everything from his ideology to his sexuality and whether anyone should actually talk to him at all.
If I were writing a glossary entry on the Streisand effect, I wouldn't put a picture of her next to it. I would put a picture of Nick Fuentes.
They have opted to not do so when it comes to Nazis like Nick Fuentes.
Fuentes takes this guy apart brick by brick. It's a full takedown.
My concern is that people who are a bit more moderate are deeply alarmed by Nick Fuentes.
I was very happy to see that, like, Nick Fuentes really passed that test with flying colors.
That fragmentation is being caused purposefully by a splinter faction of people led by a young man named Nick Fuentes.
That's the war. Can you get the beef prices down? Not crazy things that Nick Fuentes or these other loons say on social media.
Well, it looks like all the screaming about Nick Fuentes on the internet is finally dying down a little bit.
So now we had on this guy, this Fuentes guy, and never challenged him.
You should have Nick Fuentes on your show and you could ask him questions about that.
The truth is, it doesn't make a lot of sense to spend all this time talking about Nick Fuentes, but not actually to Nick Fuentes. People who say you shouldn't give him a platform overlook the very obvious fact that he already has a platform of his own, which is often bigger than most of the people complaining, and he uses it to speak unchallenged to his many followers. It's on that basis that I've invited him to appear live and uncensored on my platform, and Nick Fuentes joins me now. Nick Fuentes, welcome to Uncensored.
Hi, great to be with you.
I don't know you. I don't think we've ever met. You can correct me if that's wrong. I know about you. I know that increasingly people are talking about you in a more mainstream environment than you may be used to. So for those who know nothing about Nick Fuentes, I want this to be an opportunity to get to the real person. I don't know who that person is, but I do want to use this opportunity to get there. I've seen you talk as we prepared for this in exchanges with people and on your show, saying you fear it's going to be very hostile, it's going to be an ambush, all those kind of things. I don't intend it to be overtly hostile. I don't intend to ambush you. I intend it to be an examination of what you said on the record, an examination of what you believe or what you say you believe, and an examination of what your rising popularity says about the state of the conservative movement in America. So those are my goals from this interview. What are your goals? Why are you doing it?
I thought it'd be interesting. And, you know, you've talked a lot about me on your show over the years, and this is the first time you actually extended the invitation. I think it might be the second, actually. I think we talked about doing it during A24 a few years ago, but you've talked a lot about me with the panel, and now you've extended the invitation to talk to me. And I think it'd be interesting for me to maybe clarify some positions and maybe get to know you a little better as well. So I'm looking forward to it.
There is a belief that you have two personas. There's one that you roll out now for podcasts and for shows like mine, where you come across as reasonable. And then there's your show on Rumble, where you often come across as having, a very unreasonable view on things. This is what Coleman Hughes said about you.
Nick Fuentes knows exactly what he's doing. He is consciously playing this double game as part of a long-term strategy to become popular enough to take the reins of power, at which
Nick Fuentes doesn't hide his worldview either, to be fair. Yes and no.
Point he plans to pivot towards the extreme and unpopular policies that he advocates daily on Rumble.
So first of all, what is your response to that?
Well, first of all, I would say that Coleman Hughes is a propagandist. He works for the Free Press, which is run by Barry Weiss. So I think you have to consider the source. And Barry Weiss is a pro-Israel partisan. Free Press is just bought out by CBS for $150 million by Larry Ellison or his son David Ellison. And so I think that's coming from a particular point of view. We can't pretend like that's coming from a vacuum or from some fixed position. That's coming from a propaganda outlet that's in favor of Israel. That's first. But second, I would say he is right about the two personas. And I think that everybody understands this on some level. On my show, I make jokes and I use rhetoric and I'm hyperbolic because for a long time, I had an audience that was small on these like dissident platforms. I was on D Live for many years. A lot of people don't even know what that is. And so I had a small following and we had sort of like an in-group sense of humor and memes and things like that. And you talk about it one way on a freewheeling live stream when I'm by myself and I'm ranting and we make jokes and we play devil's advocate, we play with different positions. But then when you sit down in an interview like this one and people ask me a good faith question, what do you actually believe? Well, then I clarify and I say, well, here I'm not joking. Here I'm not being hyperbolic. I'm not being rhetorical. I'll tell you precisely what I believe. As far as this idea that I'm going to get power and then turn into Hitler, that just sounds totally insane to me. I'll be honest. It just sounds insane.
Do you have aspirations for political power?
Not really. I think that if I wanted to run for office, I wouldn't say a lot of the things that I say. I don't know that a lot of people would vote for me. I tend to offend everybody, even a lot of people that like me. So no, I'm a truth teller. I like to tell the truth. I like to do my live stream.
Who is Nick Fuentes? Tell me about your upbringing. I know you grew up in the suburbs of Chicago. Tell me about your early years.
Or early how? Like my childhood or a little bit later?
Yeah, childhood, yeah.
Well, I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago in LaGrange Park, as you say. My parents are ethnics. My father's half Mexican, half Irish. My mother's Italian. And they both came from a pretty rough upbringing themselves. They both were raised by single mothers, not because of divorce, but because both of their fathers had died. They endured a lot of dysfunction. And I think that's one of the reasons they came together and they related to each other.
Bro said ethnics when talking about his parents, dude. DEI in the field of white supremacy will never not be funny to me. I'm sorry. America is such a diverse country that our goddamn neo-Nazis are Mexican, bro. It's nuts. He said, my parents are ethnics. I don't know what's funnier. The fact that he thinks Italian is ethnic or the fact that he literally said his parents are ethnics like it's a slur. And I guess from his perspective, it kind of is a pejorative, right? Ethnics when talk about Italians and Irish.
Other, and they wanted to create a normal upbringing for their children. They wanted to have a normal family life. And so they moved out to LaGrange Park away from the city. And they raised me and my sister and really put us first. I think that's a big reason why I tend to have a lot of these family values or Christian values. My mother quit her job and stayed at home to raise us. And so I have a very close relationship with my parents, with my sister. We're a very tight family. And we grew up in a pretty idyllic town. And maybe we can sort of get into a conversation about politics from this. I loved my upbringing. My mom stayed at home. My dad was working. We're in a mostly white suburb in Chicago. I was maybe half Catholic, half Protestant. It was a baseball town. I played baseball for many years.
Wait, mostly white, but you're ethnics. How does that work? I thought you were ethnics.
In Chicago, we love our hot dogs. We have our baseball parade and get a hot dog. And so I love where I came from. I love the city. It's a working class city. I love the people here. They're very good, humble, down to earth, decent people. And I guess I had my political, not to jump ahead, but this is a big part of where my political awakening came from. I sort of left this bubble, if you could call it that. When I went to college in 2016, I went to Boston University and I read a lot of things online and I realized the country does not look like LaGrange Park. It doesn't look like Western Springs or Hinsdale or
I'm sorry. It's over. The discourse is over. Boston officially more racist than Chicago. This man learned racism in Boston. Oh my God.
Elmhurst. It looks very different. The country's undergoing a radical transformation because of immigration. And so I saw that and I said, this is not really a desirable change. I don't like the south side of Chicago or the west side or LA or certain parts of Boston as much as I like where I came from. And I guess that's what made me an American nationalist. I said, I want to preserve my home and the things that are familiar to me and the things I like about my home, what makes it America. So that's a little bit about my background. I don't know where you want to go with that, but
well, I
that's
suppose
kind of where I came from.
my first obvious question is: were your parents immigrants to the United States, or were their parents, or were their grandparents? In other words, at some stage, I presume there were immigrants in your family who came to the U.S. Is that correct?
There were. I believe my mother was 4th generation and my father was 3rd generation. So their ancestors came here on my mom's side in the 1860s, I believe, the first wave of Italian immigration. My father's ancestors, I think they came around the turn of the century in 1900.
So your view of immigration, and we'll get to the specifics about your views on immigration, are they not affected at all by the fact that if it wasn't for immigration, you wouldn't exist as an American?
Well, I would certainly exist, but like you said, maybe not as an American. Certainly that's influenced in some measure. But I think that the kind of immigration that we had for a long time in the country, it's different than the immigration that we have now.
Huh? Why? You just called your parents ethnics, dumbass. That's exactly what they said about Italians. There was a Nick Fuentes in every era. And yes, at the time, when your Irish great-grandparents were coming to the United States of America, that's literally what they were saying about your Irish great-grandparents. Just like at the time when the Italian great-grandparents were coming into the United States of America, they were saying the same shit about them. Also, your dad's half Mexican. I don't even know where to go from there. Beyond like the Irish and the Italian ethnic background, the ethnics, as he likes to say, the exact same white nativist sentiment was launched towards his great-grandparents at the time.
And let's just say for openers, it's different immigrants. They're coming from a different place with a different culture, a different religion. It's not the same as it was. So first, you have a qualitative difference. My ancestors, for the most part, I have 3 European grandparents from Ireland and Italy, 1 from Mexico. They came from Europe. They came from a society where there's a common ancestry, there's a common religion, common civilization. The people that have come in since 65, since Hart-Celler, they're coming from China, India, the Northern Triangle, Mexico, Venezuela. And so first,
the notion that there is like a commonality amongst these people is so funny, especially when you even add on Italians and the Irish into the equation, both of which are Catholic and beefed with the WASPs that dominated America since the beginning of time. The WASPs that dominated America had more smoke for the Catholics than they did for like Muslims. They don't know what the Muslims really were. They were like, oh, that's exotic. Cool. The idea that these guys all share this like common history, this commonality, is completely made up new age bullshit to try and justify like Western supremacy. Okay, Western civilizational supremacy. It's ridiculous. These guys fought each other all the goddamn time, dude. He's trying to say the new guys are coming in and they're brown. In the 1600s, there was literally a Dutch nationalist slogan that went, better a Turk than a papist. It's built around historical revisionism, and it's also kind of funny because, like I said, every single part of his background at a different point throughout history has been dunked on and shit on by a guy exactly like Nick Fuentes, just adjusted to whenever his great-grandparents migrated. When it was the Italian migration that was taking place, there was a guy like Nick Fuentes going, get these Italians out of here. They're no better than dogs. They can't get jobs. They're all criminals. Same with when his great-grandparents from the Irish side were immigrating into the United States of America. They were like, get these Irish out of here. At that point, yeah, Irish need not apply signs everywhere. Like, it's just so funny that he is, and then also the fact that his dad is also half Mexican makes it even funnier because, like, Mexican is the newest version of this kind of ridiculous hatred towards a group of people that are migrating into the United States of America and with false claims that they cannot actually integrate.
Just different people. Secondly, it's a quantitative difference. There's way more, and it's an unceasing, always increasing wave. For the first 3 or 4 waves of immigration, you would have a major influx of immigrants and then it would stop. And then you'd have another wave and then it would stop. This one, it just keeps going up for 35 years and it's too many. So that's really where I would draw the distinction between maybe where I originate from. I would even just simply call that immigration. What this is an invasion. It's a completely different policy.
But you mentioned,
can't even call it the same thing.
But you mentioned Mexico in that list, and your father is half Mexican. So,
yeah,
I mean, by your criteria, part of the invasion would include your father, presumably, and his immediate descendants who came from Mexico.
Not really true, because when my father's ancestors came here, it was a small fraction of the total immigrants that came from Mexico. I don't believe that we should have 0 immigrants forever, or even 0 immigrants from non-white countries. But you have to draw the distinction. My father's father, he was here in the 40s and 50s.
Oh, never mind, boys. Is good for him. Wait, he just said we should do zero immigrants from non-white countries. Okay, but your father is non-white. Is this where he tries to do the cope of like, well, technically my father is a descendant of Spanish colonizers? Is that what he's going to say? I'll have you know, Piers, there's white Mexicans. Is that the cope?
But you have to draw the distinction. My father's father, he was here in the 40s and 50s. It was his parents, or I believe either his parents or grandparents, that came here even earlier. Up until 1965, 90% of the immigrants were coming from Europe. I have no problem with that. If we have 10% of them coming from Mexico or Latin America, maybe that's reasonable, but that's not what it is now. Now you've got 10 million illegals in 4 years under Joe Biden, and you got millions more legal immigrants from China, India, Venezuela, El Salvador. And it's so many with no break for assimilation, and they're all from non-white countries. It's transforming what America is. And again, that's the distinction. That's what makes it unacceptable.
I always believe everybody's a product of their environment. Right? I've interviewed thousands of people. I mean, maybe 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 people from all different walks of life. But the one common theme I would say is everyone's a product of their environment. And I was reading some stuff about you in the last.
Stop coping with this. He's a Spaniard, not even Mexican shit, okay? You're literally giving him the take. What the fuck are you talking about? I get it. You're embarrassed. I understand why you feel the way that you do, but you are unironically leaning into the Nazis' argument about how he's actually racially pure because he's not mixed with the indigenous population of Mexico, despite his father's nationality.
Last few days, there was an episode of your podcast where you talked about your father, Bill Fuentes, and how he wouldn't take the family, including you, to certain restaurants because he believed they were associated with African Americans. We would be deciding where to go to eat, you said. What are we going to do for dinner tonight? It was a running joke. Me and my sister would say Applebee's, and my dad would say we would never eat at Applebee's. Not in a million years should you be caught dead, Fuentes said about Applebee's. Go to a different restaurant, a local restaurant. No Applebee's, no Red Lobster. That is commonly known as black fare. And you also shared another story about your family and restaurants. So before me and my sister were born, my family had a saying about Olive Garden that contains the N-word that we're not allowed to say. So my question, based on that anecdote that you say on your own podcast, is do you think you grew up in a racist environment, that your father was inherently racist, and that thought process moved to you?
Well, I would say it's a new low. I've been attacked for being a racist many times, but to attack my father, to attack my parents based on anecdotes, I would say that's sort of a new low.
Hang on, it's your anecdote.
Yeah, but he's not here to defend himself.
You are.
And my parents are.
You told the story.
And I will. And I'll
I'm not trying to
them.
ambush you. As I said at the start, Nick, to be clear.
No, it's not an ambush.
Nick, to be clear,
I think
I'm not
understands.
ambushing you. I'm literally reading an anecdote that you revealed on your podcast. It's you that's put it in the public domain.
I know.
I'm simply asking you whether my assessment of that, which is that your father didn't want to take you to certain restaurants because of what you refer to as they were commonly known as black fare, whether that attitude to African Americans in that instance permeated to you. It's a reasonable question.
Yeah, no, like I said, I think everybody knows what that is, but I'll address it. I'll engage with it, and I'll defend my father from the charge of...
Nick Fuentes is such an awful piece of shit that there are varying degrees of associations that he has throughout his life, and every single person from whatever area that he is associated with in any way, shape, or form is fighting for their life in there. You got Mexicans being like, nah, you don't understand. He's a colonizer. He's actually a Spaniard. I swear to God. You got Bostonians in the chat being like, okay, well, it turns out his father was racist, actually, so Boston's still on top. Boston actually made him woke for a brief moment. It's so funny that everyone's like, there's going to be like Applebee's employees in here being like, no, actually, we do not claim Nick Fuentes. Nobody wants to have him.
Racism.
Sure.
No, my parents are not racist, and they've never been racist. I'll tell you about my parents. They used to have a school in Chicago in the South Loop where they instructed people on how to shoot firearms. It was a security school, and most of the clients were black. And I believe actually one of their clients was Larry Hoover's son at one point, sort of a funny story. And so most of their clients would come in from the South side of Chicago. My grandmother, she grew up in the projects in the city. And so my family being in Chicago, being ethnics, being Italian, Irish, Mexican in the West Side on Taylor Street, all over the city. My family for many generations have lived near and around black people. And look, my views about black people and their views about black people are shaped with experiences with black people. And what they will tell you, what my parents would say if they were here, is that for many, many years, the older generations of black people were very respectful, very humble, very decent. In fact, my grandma used to have an anecdote. She grew up in a lot of dysfunction. Her mother was mentally ill, and they would be having dinner in the projects, and there'd be so much chaos and dysfunction and disagreement and fighting. And she would look across the way out the window at a black family in the other apartment, and they'd be holding hands around the table saying grace. And this is sort of the culture that used to prevail. But now what you have in the city is that there's no accountability for the black people. And now Chicago has become a complete dump because these teenagers go out and they take over the city. They call them teen takeovers. That's the euphemism for it. They're teenagers, but they all come from the same neighborhood. They drive up there and they mug people and attack people and they destroy cars and destroy shops. We had the Festival of Lights a couple of weeks ago. It's supposed to be a family event. And they light up the trees and they, there's a big parade. I was in the parade one year and you had a bunch of black people there shooting each other. 7 people shot, a 14-year-old killed in the Magnificent Mile. And I know there's a lot of black people that feel the same way about this. They say, we've lost control of the city and we're looking for accountability. We have a lot of black people that are always outraged about racism.
Yeah, black people are always saying, hey, we want accountability on us. We can't control ourselves. That's what they're always saying, right? Nobody wants crime, dumbass. The entire point is you make it seem as though crime is happening at the point of race. That's the issue in Chicago. And it's just true. Just went to grab a bite to eat and I got killed. Yeah. It's also pretty funny because it's like, if I hadn't gone to the South Side personally, I feel like the prevailing narrative is that it's like a very dangerous place. Except you go there and it's a working class community just trying to survive, just as everybody else in this goddamn country. And yes, when there is more poverty, there is always going to be more crime. But this overemphasis on the blackness of the crime is the racism. That's what it is. This notion that black people are doing crimes because they're black and they can't help themselves and there's no accountability. Someone needs to actually pull them aside and aggressively prosecute them. That's where the racism comes from.
I'm outraged about attitudes from white people, but they're never ashamed of some of these behaviors, never ashamed of some of the things that go on. And that's why I think there's a lot of negative attitudes these days. And so, again, I think those attitudes, you say I'm a product of my environment. I am. And so are my parents and my grandparents. Unlike you, because you're not even American, in Chicago, we have to live in a big, diverse city where there's a lot of different kinds of people. And I
live in a big
anybody in
diverse
Chicago
city.
tell you the same.
I live in London. It's one of the biggest and most diverse cities in the world.
But it's not the same.
Wait, why
actually,
not?
it's a big.
Wait, why not? That makes no sense. I thought London was also on fire because, black and brown people have completely taken over. They have Asians, not black people. First of all, yes, they do have black people. And also, secondly, none of that matters, regardless of what the minority population looks like. That's so funny. Oh, it's a different kind of minority, so it's different.
Big diversity. The only difference is we don't have the gun violence because we don't have guns. That's a whole different story. I don't want to get into that.
England colonized the entire planet. You think there's not black people? What are you, crazy? The UK only has like 3 to 4% black, counting mixed. That's the entirety of the UK. You just used the entirety of the UK, which is, still a pretty significant percentage. But we're talking about London, dog. What is the percentage of black people living in the United States of America, you think? 50%? No, it's 13%. 3 to 4% is a pretty significant number. As far as black population in London, I don't know what the actual percentage is. Yeah, okay, 13.5%. That's identical to the American national population. There you go. Not that it matters, but of course, it's a very diverse country.
With you, I have got into that before.
You got
in America.
a knife problem. You got sword problems.
We have problems with
Aladdin.
We have problems with violent crime. I make no pretense of it. So the idea that somehow I'm cosseted in London because I'm not in Chicago.
I didn't say that.
Well, you kind of implied it, but
Piers Morgan is like, no, you don't understand, Nick. I too hate them. Conversation devolved into, no, I am the true racist, Nicholas. I hate them too. You see? Yes, don't tell me that I'm sitting atop my ivory tower. I too have been killed by black crime on the way to get jellied eels. This is the reason why these guys can't combat the unlimited right-wing neo-Nazi sentiment. It's so stupid. Bro, you missed the set Aladdin.
The idea that somehow I'm cosseted in London because I'm not in Chicago.
I didn't say that.
Well, you kind of implied it, but I guess my point about the environment, I'm not saying you are a product of your environment. I'm saying most people are in some capacity. When I read that... and
did Nick just say you have Aladdin? Yeah, whatever. He's being racist. Who cares? Move on. Yeah, oh my God. He said you have Aladdin. Yeah. Yeah, he's saying the British crime is of Muslim origin and they use knives. Okay, who cares? Let's keep going.
It's just to remind you, it's not something...
But you don't have to give me the highlight reel of all of his best racist moments in the Piers Morgan interview, okay? Let's continue.
I have put out there. You told this story, right? And you said...
You said this. We're looping. You said this already.
But you haven't really directly, I think, responded to it, which is whether your father would not take you to certain restaurant chains because he associated them with black Americans. Is that true?
No, well, see here, if you're in America, you would say that Olive Garden is not real Italian food. Applebee's, TGI Fridays, and stuff is a load of crap. My dad was just a food snob, but no, it's got nothing to do with that. My best friend in first grade was a black guy. We're not a racist family. So
okay, so when you...
Oh, well, I'm convinced. Never mind, boys. There it is. How could you call him racist now? This man has straight up said, well, first of all, he said he's a Nazi. So it's pretty funny that he's like, I'm a Nazi, but not the racist kind. And he has said that miscegenation is akin to bestiality. That's ridiculous.
You told the story. I'm just curious. So when you told that anecdote, which clearly on the face of it is racist.
Also, can I just say something really funny? I have a black friend. How can I be racist? It's obviously a stupid thing that many racist people say from time to time. Nick Fuentes is so racist that he couldn't even say that. So he said, I had a black friend in first grade. Like, he couldn't even own up to currently having a black friend right now. He might as well have said he's friends with Kanye West or something, you know, or Sneeko. But it is pretty funny where he was like, listen, I'm not trying to go that far. You know, I had a black friend.
You're basically saying your father made racist decisions about where.
Could you address his idea of miscegenation and bestiality and the fact that his parents were ethnics? Okay, we got to stop saying his parents were ethnics just because he said it. Okay. Also, yes, his worldview doesn't make any sense because it's stupid, okay?
You would go as a family to eat. Are you saying, well, I'm just going to ask you a question. Are you saying that when you told that story, you didn't mean to infer that he was racist? And do you understand why when somebody like me reads that anecdote for the first time, as I did this week, I reach a different conclusion?
Well, I understand what you're doing, which is a sort of making of a murderer. How did he become racist? Well, his father didn't eat an Olive Garden because he said that's not real Italian food. Hang on, can I? What's with the interruptions? Can I explain?
I'm literally reminding you of something you said on your show, which led me to conclude a certain thing. If I'm wrong, tell me.
Yeah, it was said in jest as a humorous anecdote, and now you're trying to spin it into a narrative, which is his parents are racist. He comes from a long line of racists. And I think everybody knows my parents are boomers. Mm-hmm. And these people come, well, you're a boomer, I guess, too. In a way,
60.
right? You were born
in
what, 19? Yeah, so you're a boomer also. Or maybe you're a Gen Xer. I suppose it's sort of on the cusp. But it's a humorous anecdote. These are kind of the attitudes of baby boomers in society, but you're trying to spin it into a narrative, which is you're a product of your environment. Your dad's racist because of this joke. Now you're a racist. And I don't think that's a fair characterization.
Okay. People can make their own minds up. They can go back and listen to you say it. I mean, the beauty of what I'm going to talk to you about in this interview is that almost all of it is just going to be reminding you what you have said and asking you what you meant. Your position about that story is that it was a joke, okay? I want to come to something else you said. This is where you talk about Jews, women, and blacks. Let's just take a listen.
They're always coming up with, no, it's not the Jews. No, it's not women. No, it's not blacks. It's actually really complicated. No, it isn't at all.
The difference between Nick Fuentes and Piers Morgan in this situation is like maybe he wouldn't say the Jews. Because like what he's doing here is exactly the same thing that Ben Shapiro does. It's exactly the same thing that the average Republican does with regular frequency. It is actually super simple that crime doesn't manifest from material conditions at all. It's actually a direct consequence of, well, Nick Fuentes might say racial impurities or racial inferiority, but Ben Shapiro will say it's cultural impurities and cultural inferiority as a substitute for race. That's it. There is no difference in their worldview at all, with one exception, the Jews, right? That's it. All he's saying here is systemic factors are not the reason why black people do crime. They do crime because they're black people. They're inferior. That's the argument that he's making. And that's exactly the same argument that the average right-winger makes, which is precisely the reason why when you have someone like Nick Fuentes on a platform and it's a right-winger that's trying to address his takes, he could just turn around and be like, what are you talking about? You agree with me on this shit. And then he can pair that up and then turn around and say, the only thing you don't agree with me on is Jews. And the reason why you don't agree with me on the issue of Jews is because Jews control you. They're your bosses. They're your friends. They're your neighbors. They're the ones who control society. And you're scared of saying it about Jews. And one might ask the question, why, Piers? Is it only the Jews that we can't speak like this about? You can speak like this about Mexicans. You can speak like this about black people, but you can't speak like this about Jews. If he just turns around and says that, boom, all of a sudden, every right-winger that's watching Piers Morgan that might have thought that Nick Fuentes was a Nazi and bad is going to be like, you know what? He is kind of right about that, actually. That's the problem.
Jews are running society. Women need to shut up. Blacks need to be imprisoned for the most part. And we would live in paradise. It's that simple.
Would you like to clarify what you meant there?
That's all true. That's 100% true. Everything I said in that clip is true.
Including that blacks need to be imprisoned for the most part?
Yes.
But all of them?
No, for the most part.
What does the most part mean? What percentage of American blacks would you like to see in prison?
whatever the percentages of the murderers. I think it's 1 in 20 black men will commit a murder in their lifetime. So maybe let's say that 5%.
Oh, so you're talking about black people who murder people?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
But you didn't.
If your argument is murderers should be in prison, can you explain to me how that's not happening already? Like, is there a situation where a black person is doing a murder and then the cops are like, oh, he's black, bro, we can't lock him up? Is that what's going on? Mike looked it up. It's 1 in 100 for the most part, he said. Perhaps there's a different reason why he has to back away from that position that he has on his broadcast. The average conservative, they will tell you, yes, they do get away with the crime. Yeah, it's bullshit. Anyway, he's not able to stand on that. He starts off by saying, yeah, of course. And then the moment that there's a follow-up question, he's like, well, you know, people who do murder should be in prison. It's like, yeah, okay. Yeah, I think people who do murder should be in prison. That's not a controversial take. The point here is that you are claiming that 1 out of every 5 black person is doing a murder, which is not only false, but even if that was the case, which is not the case, right? Are the people that are doing murders when they're black not going to prison? Are you insane? Yeah. Not only does for the most part imply a higher percentage than even the 5% as he suggested, even though the 5% is wrong and it's actually 1%. But regardless, every part of this is wrong. And he's also personally backed away from the position anyway.
That's you just said problem. Blacks need to be imprisoned for the most part. You didn't clarify that you were talking about black murderers.
Right. No, you're right. That's a good addition to that. That's a great point.
You think it's funny, or?
I do. I think it's hilarious. I think it's totally true.
Do you think a black American would find it funny? You think that blacks should be imprisoned for the most part?
Blacks are my biggest fans. I get high fives all the time. They say, Nick Fuentes, I love your show. They agree with me. And you want to know why? Here's the difference. Black people are the most victimized by other black people. You think black people want to live in the hood and the ghetto and get shot all the time? That's what happens in the south side of Chicago. You should come here. I'll take you there. We could go to Garfield Park.
My son went to Chicago University for a year, actually, several years ago.
Yeah, that's a bubble. That's a bubble. You think you're in Chicago and Hyde Park? You don't know Chicago. Go a little bit west. See what it's like over there. And I'll tell you, black people agree with me because they're tired of it too. And maybe not most of them, but a lot of them agree with what I say about that because they know how it is. That's why the first thing they do when they make a little bit of money is they go and leave to another neighborhood.
Okay, so what was just remind me again, the percentage of...
Yeah, black people definitely agree with Nick Fuentes, man. Come on, dude. Wow, I can't believe that when black people actually experience upward social mobility, they get housing in a better neighborhood where they have better finances. That's so shocking. It's only black people who do this, by the way. White people famously stay in whatever kind of torn down neighborhood that they were from when they're poor. When they make money, they stay in the torn down neighborhood. You know, this is the idiotic argument. It's not even 1%. There are 48.3 million black people in the U.S. There are 2,600 homicides committed by black people. That's like 1 in 2,000, not 5%, not 1%. We already established that he's lying, okay? I mean, of course he's lying. He's a Nazi.
Black men who commit murder in America. What was the percentage you gave me?
It's 1 in 20. 1 in 20.
It's 1 in 100.
No, it's 1 in 20.
No. Less than 1 in 100 black U.S. men commit murder. That's the most up-to-date crime statistics in America.
That's not true. I've seen other statistics. They say 1 in 20 will eventually commit a murder.
So your rate means that...
Oh, eventually. 1 in 20 will eventually commit a murder. Oh, got it. Bro is precogging crime, dude? He said racist minority report. It's kind of funny. He's so racist that even Piers Morgan is coming across as woke here, by the way.
You're saying that 5 times as many black men commit murder as the official crime statistics say?
Yeah, there's a report, I believe, on X by Data Hazard. I'll have to go and double check.
Oh, come on. Oh, no. A real well moment for Nick Fuentes. Oh, really? Oh, you got your data from X, you say? The moment where you have to rely on empirical evidence to do your quote-unquote scientific racism, you have to immediately rely on random guy on Twitter. This is why I get really mad at my dumbass haters who are always like, Hasan, you get your stuff from Twitter. It's like, you get your stuff from Twitter too. It's like, yeah, dumbass. I rely on reporters breaking news on Twitter. Their own news that they're breaking on verified legacy publisher media outlets. Okay? If I were to turn around and go, oh, I saw this random number from my favorite account, 1488 Himmler's Titty, and he told me that black people are doing 1 million murders a day, that'd be a little different than like actually a real verified journalist breaking a story that they are reporting on in a legacy publisher. Yeah, this is it. Data hazard. Homicides are cause of death for 5.5 black males over the past 54 years. 2019 and 2021 was the largest 2-year increase. At current rates, we now expect almost 1 in 20 black males to commit murder in his life. Wow. Data hazard. Random racist guy on X, he says. I guess if you found a guy on Twitter, can't really argue against that.
That for you. But yes, there's some pretty shocking evidence that says that it's far more alarming than you would think.
Yeah, it's pretty shocking because it's not real evidence. That's why it's shocking.
Okay, but you would accept that the official crime statistics are 1 in 100? Or you wouldn't accept that statistic?
I don't know. I don't have it in front of me, but I've seen other evidence. Like I said, Data Hazard on X, I believe, produced a report about a year ago. It said 1 in 20. But I mean, whether it's 1 in 20 or 1 in 100, that's a lot of people, Piers. I mean,
sure,
this is
a lot of white
problem.
people commit murder too. Well, they do, don't they?
Okay, but it's about proportionality. I mean, white people are 65% of the population. Blacks are 13%. And I think anybody would tell you that more black people proportionally commit violent crime than white people. And people vote with their feet. People would rather pay a much higher property tax.
Most mass
what's
shootings.
with the interruptions?
I'm sorry.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You know, you look at in Chicago, in New York, these neighborhoods are so stratified. People would rather pay a high tax rate. They'd rather pay a much higher property value to live in a less diverse, less black neighborhood because they don't want to live around the violence. And I think that when you look at even on the public transit, the subway, the blue line, you know, people don't want to go there because they know who occupies and menaces the public transit. It is these people like Daniel Penny had to deal with. It's people like Irina Zarutska had to deal with. And that's just the uncomfortable reality.
You've also said you don't want to live near black people. Let's take a listen to this clip.
I'm a new generation of white person. I'm not living around blacks. Sorry. You know, I want white kids and I don't want my white kids bringing home black people to marry. It's racial for me. And call me racist. Oh, very Christian of you. I don't give a
I mean, it couldn't be clearer, really, unless you want to say that's another of your jokes. But you're basically saying, yeah, I'm a racist, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
You're fine with saying you're a racist?
Totally. I think everybody's racist. I think everybody, if we're being honest, is racist. I think everybody, the only people that aren't racist or pretend not to be are white people to their detriment. Everybody else is racist.
Earlier in the interview, you really got aggrieved at the idea that your father was a racist. You wanted to make emphatically sure.
My father's...
He's not.
Because my father doesn't share my same views on that.
So he's the exception to everyone's a racist.
Well, everybody's a little bit racist. You're right. So maybe everybody, the difference is you're attacking my father. You know, he can get fired from his job.
I'm not attacking.
Yeah, this is a classic argument. If you've never encountered a real racist, they say this all the time. I recall this from my, peak debate lord days, all the way back in like 2018, 2019, or even beyond that in like 2016, where these guys would try to justify their own version of current racism by claiming that, everyone has tribalistic values, you know, and Tucker Carlson used to do this all the time at Fox News. You say, well, you want your family, you want to be able to communicate with your family, you want to be able to understand your family. It would be weird if your family had people that you had never met before. And it's like, that's a really stupid argument because unless you are directly marrying your sister or brother or cousin, you do actually bring random people into your family, dumbass. It's very simple. As far as like, well, everyone's a bit racist. He's not doing like, woke anti-colonial studies here, okay? He's saying like, he's not doing critical race theory when he's like, well, everyone's a little racist. He means it in a positive. He means it in the affirmative. God forbid a man only his day ones. That's awesome. Oh, that's a really funny way to describe cousin f***ing. Okay, that was awesome, chatter. Anyway, let's continue.
Your father.
You are.
No, I'm not. I don't know your father. And to be clear, I have no knowledge about him at all.
Well, then let's leave him out of it. Let's leave him out of it if you don't know him.
Hang on, Nick. You put that story into the public domain on your show. I'm simply reminding you of what you told everybody, millions of people, about your father. If you now want to retract it, fine. If you want to say it was a joke, which is what your position was earlier, fine. But I'm allowed to put to you things you've said publicly. That's not unfair. That's not me targeting your father. You put that story about him out there.
You know what you're doing. You know what you're doing.
I'm asking you about a pretty shocking anecdote, which to me looked like you were saying your father made decisions about where you as a family would eat based on skin color of people who worked at these places. If you say, or use them, if you say that is not what you meant, that's fine. You can respond any way you like. But the idea I can't ask you about it without you saying I'm attacking your father is ridiculous.
Well, you are, and you know what you're doing. And there's a political culture in America where if you have the wrong views, you get fired from your job. And my father...
Would you agree this interview is not going well for Fuentes so far in terms of appealing to normies? I wouldn't say it's going really poorly. Maybe it falls apart further in the future, but like he is an odious figure, right? So his worldview is nasty. It's disgusting. It's something that people understandably oppose, even if they kind of agree with him, right? The reason why a lot of people like Nick Fuentes have to hide historic examples of what they support, what kind of movements they support, is because even racist people don't want to be called racist. Even people who would most likely agree with a lot of average neo-Nazis' worldviews would hate being called a Nazi. They were like, oh, I'm not a Nazi. And they wouldn't even agree with someone who is a self-identifying Nazi. So it's not great for him because he's like flailing around, but it's also partially not going too poorly because there is a limitation to Piers Morgan's worldview. Because Piers Morgan himself is like also kind of right-wing, right? And when you are also a right-winger that, you know, talks about Islamic style crimes that are taking place in London all the time and blah, 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 all this shit, he's just seen as like a more honest version of Piers Morgan for people who have subscribed to Piers Morgan's worldview already. He just looks as more of a confident version of this.
As a job, and if you go on here and say, you charge him with racism or something, and I'm put in a position where I don't look like I'm sticking to my guns if I don't say my father's a racist, you're putting him in jeopardy, and he's not here to defend himself or explain his views. And it's very low, and I think you know exactly what you're doing, and people can see what you're doing. I'll defend my views, you know, so let's leave him out of it. Let's just not talk about my father because my father isn't here. I'm here.
Okay, well, then do you accept that you shouldn't talk?
Okay,
listen, that's fine. But then do you accept you shouldn't talk about your father on your show? And you shouldn't tell...
Absolutely not. Absolutely
not. So
not.
it's fine for you to put a story out there which would make most people who listened to that story or watched it at the time on your show conclude that he was racist. It's fine for you to do that. But if I then ask you about it, I'm the one who's being unfair and I've crossed a line. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, you're being malicious.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Listen, people are watching this live. They can draw their own conclusions about whether what I just did.
And they will.
Yeah, and I'm sure afterwards, by the way, you'll say, he ambushed me with your own words.
Whoa.
With your own words.
That's a little presumptuous. I'm not going to say it's an ambush, but I think that's a low blow. And I think you know what you're doing, and that's fine. You're a tabloid journalist. I expected that. I don't think it's an ambush because I knew it would be like this. And people will see what you're doing, and I think they'll say it's low. But as far as you want to talk about racism,
I do.
Let's talk about racism.
Okay,
let's leave my dad out of it.
Look, you've admitted you're a racist, correct?
Yes, 100%.
Okay.
Own it.
Okay, that's fine. You're perfectly entitled in a free democratic society to stare down the barrel of his camera and tell me you're a racist. People can judge you accordingly. Many people who have assumed that you're racist will now have heard it from your own lips. That's fine.
There you go.
That's the point. The point of this interview is to go over the things you said, which have led people to reach conclusions about you, and to ascertain whether those conclusions are fair and reasonable or not. That's it. So I want to play you another clip. This is what you talk about why white people are justified in being racist. Let's take a listen to this.
First, white people are every single bit justified in being racist. Every single bit justified, to the extent that that means going out of your way to avoid black people when you see them.
You stand by
that? Absolutely.
So white people should go out of their way to avoid black people when they see them?
Absolutely. They would be wise.
Why?
You just realized how Christmas our background is? Yeah, my background is more Christmas than Nick Fuentes' background. Who's the real lover of Christ, bitch? That's right. A Muslim motherfucker by the name of Hasan out-Christing your bitch ass, dude. Turns out, who's the real ethnic and who's the real white man here, okay? That's right. W Christianity. W Christmas. But you have more colored lights, sus? You don't love Christ?
Because it's a lose-lose proposition. If you're Irina Zarutska and you don't walk the other way, you get stabbed to death and you die. If you're somebody else and you walk on the subway and you stand, you're a black person or something, maybe it's fine. It's a lose-lose proposition. So no, I think that white people have been beaten into submission, that we're afraid to tell the truth about it. And the truth is that when you go into these major cities like New York or Chicago, I believe she was in North Carolina, there is a menace, which is young, black, adolescent men. They're extremely violent. And we have been told that we have to pretend like they are every other person. We have to be colorblind to that. And we're supposed to go and be in the midst of all this danger. And I think that at this point, it's gotten out of control. You look at the BLM movement, they said that the reason that black people...
Dude, what's going on? Are like black teenagers constantly bullying Nick Fuentes wherever he goes? He's like, yo, you don't understand. Everywhere I go, there are black teenagers that are making fun of me. What's going on? We need to stop this. We found the new meta. I feel like this is the new meta. White people are most victimized by other white people. So by his logic, white people should avoid each other at all costs. Yeah. No, but you see, it's different when a black person does it, especially a black teenager. Yes, don't give me your bullshit woke statistics about how whites are victimized by other whites at a much higher rate, okay? It's a different kind when it's a black teenager that's making fun of me. I don't like that extra hard. No way he believes that himself, right? I don't know. Nick was never allowed on the rec courts. He was class president in high school. He was openly anti-Civil Rights Act even then.
Are violent, or the reason there's crime is because of police brutality, or redlining, or all these other things. They said we need to get rid of the police. We need to defund them.
Yeah. Why is there a high rate of crime in poor neighborhoods, regardless of color, by the way? Why is there a higher rate of crime in poorer neighborhoods as opposed to wealthier neighborhoods? I wonder. Yeah, it's got to be when black people do it is different, though. That's what it is. You see, black crime is different than white crime, you know, even if it's the same crime, actually. It's totally different.
And a lot of cities did. A lot of cities like Chicago, for example, the police changed the rules of engagement. They don't chase them. It's not a felony if you steal a certain amount of merchandise. They won't chase them on foot. And now the city's totally up for grabs. And now whether you're in the Gold Coast or whether you're on the Mag Mile or you're in the worst neighborhoods in the city, you might get shot. You might get mugged. Someone might run up on you. And I tell my followers.
Yeah. Did he say black people always come up to him and shake his hand, but now he says to avoid black people? Yeah. He says black people are always coming up to him to shake his hand because they're like, yo, we agree with you so much. But he always avoids them, so he never actually ends up shaking their hands. He didn't say he's shaking their hands back. Also, he said high five. He's like, all the unks are coming up to him like, hey, high five, man, Nick Fuentes, you're my favorite political commentator. And he's like, no. And then he runs away.
It is better to be perceived as racist or racist and walk the other way and maybe keep your life than to say, I'm a good anti-racist. I don't mind that this person's making me uncomfortable. Maybe he's...
Dog, you're an insane person. I'm sorry. You're an insane person. If you see like a random ass black person walking down the street and your automatic assumption is, oh my God, this random ass black person is going to kill me, I have to run away. You're basically describing your own mental insanity, but you're trying to justify it. Not only are you a pussy, you're an insane pussy. You should be embarrassed to admit this. Not because like, oh, people are going to call you racist. Like, you should just be embarrassed to admit such an insane thing. Like, how can you anchor your worldview around this fundamental first principle of insanity? You don't understand. I see a black person walking down the street, I immediately run away. Even if that was a fear that you had, you probably shouldn't say that out loud. That's such a psychotic thing to say. It's such a cowardly thing to say. And then these guys will go, oh, it's suicidal empathy. What is suicidal empathy? That I just like don't automatically assume that every person with melanin is going to murder me? Like I'm constantly on the verge of death every day that I exist.
He's looking a little froggy. I'm going to sit down because I'm a good person and get stabbed, mugged, whatever. And by the way, this is a strategy. They call it the friendly stranger. There's a crew of them. They do this in Chicago. They stand outside bars, black people. They approach strangers. It's a robbery crew. And they pretend to be a friendly stranger. And then they mug them. And stupid white people say, oh.
What you're describing is not exclusive to black people. What you're describing is someone doing a crime. Does Nick Fuentes think white people don't do this stuff? Like, what is going on here? Yes, dude, stranger danger is not just stranger danger against black people. It can come from every angle. What is this conversation? Like, what is happening? Does he think that, like, white people don't mug other white people or black people? You know what I mean? Like, no, white people do that shit too. It doesn't make any sense. Like, he's just hyper focusing on, like, well, black people do this. And the reason why white people get duped by it is because they're too nice to black people. This is before we even get to much larger, much more consequential versions of crime, oftentimes also conducted by white people, but that's, that's legalized usually because they're robbing the poor, but they're also doing it at the corporate level. That's not perceived as a crime in the same way.
Hi, yeah, nice to meet you. You know, they grin, they laugh, they put up with the nonsense, and then they get mugged, or worse. Sometimes they get executed. And so as a white person...
How do you feel about mass shootings at school?
I think they're bad.
Who do you think commits the vast majority of the mass shootings?
I'm sure it's white people.
Right. So how do you feel about that?
I think that white people do more antisocial violence. I think black people participate in more gang violence. I think that's the difference.
What's the difference to the victim?
He's capable of crafting systemic analysis when it comes to white people doing crime. That's crazy. But I guess even in that situation, it's not systemic analysis because he's just saying like, oh, they're doing antisocial personality disordered forms of violence, like, someone having like a psychotic outbreak. But what's really interesting is Piers shouldn't say, oh, well, what's the difference to the victims? While that is true, the real question he needs to ask here is, what's the difference between like antisocial crimes versus what you factor in as like gang crimes, like gang violence? Because ultimately, both of those versions of violence are still very much clearly coming from material conditions, or at least material conditions play a formative role in not addressing the mental health complications that take place, for example, right? Or especially when it comes to gang violence, right? Gang violence is directly born out of being born into an area where you have no other options, you have no other alternatives.
Victims.
There's no difference to the victim, but it's a different kind of crime, and it's a different proportion also. Do you know what percentage of white people are school shooters?
I know that the vast majority of mass shootings in schools in America this century were perpetrated by young white men. And
what proportion?
I'm curious.
This is the thing about Fuentes' rhetoric. This really boils down to him saying for white people it's only the exception, but for black people it's the trend. And Piers isn't equipped to deal with that, which is actually bad if his whole goal is to let the audience judge for themselves. Most people won't dissect the statement, but it still seeps into how they think. Yeah.
I'm curious whether your advice would be to people who have kids in these schools.
Is my mic working?
Should they avoid white people at school? Should people with the kids at school avoid young white men at school?
No.
Okay.
Do you know what per capita means? Do you know proportionality? There are more black people proportionally that engage in violent crime or are involved in gangs, especially in these major cities, than there are white.
I wonder why. Is it genetic inferiority or cultural inferiority, or is it a direct consequence of the fact that there are more black people living in abject poverty than there are white people per capita, of course? The per capita argument is easy to comprehend when you realize that it is actually poverty and systemic discrimination and a lack of interest in addressing the previous incredibly violent, systematized, racialized discrimination that is the reason why black people are living in poverty by higher rates than white people are. This doesn't mean that white people are doing great, okay? That's not what I'm saying at all. But ultimately, that is the reason. It's either that or some other thing. Nick Fuentes believes it's some other thing. And that some other thing is racial, genetic, or cultural inferiority to whites.
People that are school shooters compared to the entire white population, and everybody understands that.
Two-thirds of mass shootings at school perpetrated by white people.
But what proportion of white men commit school shootings? That's the question.
I've just told you. It's 60-65% of school shootings by white people.
You're telling me what proportion of school shootings are committed by white people. I'm saying what proportion of white people have committed school shootings. Are you playing dumb or are you just...
Wait, you also lied about what proportion of black people are also doing murders in the beginning of this conversation. So what's the point here? What's the percentage of white people that have done school shootings as opposed to all white people that haven't done school shootings is stupid. It's also stupid to say what percentage of black people have actually engaged in murder as opposed to all black people, except it's not dumb if you want to propagandize that position by simply lying about the proportion of black men that have engaged in the act of murder, which he also cynically frames as in their lifetime, they will potentially do a murder, and then straight up lie about the number when he said 1 in 20, only to then turn around and go, oh, well, I saw it on Twitter.
It's not that
What
smart.
difference does
What's
that make to the children lying dead on the ground?
See, now you want to jump on the victims. The difference is you're asking, would you fear white people or black people? And that's the difference. The difference is
What I'm saying to you is, by your logic, if we now have agreed that the vast majority of mass shootings in schools are committed by white people and predominantly young white men, then presumably...
How do you explain the significant difference in crime rate between poor blacks and poor whites? Probably not something you'd analyze because it'd shatter your virtuous narrative. Wait, what? They have the same crime rates. You should become a better racist, I think. Not only are you racist, but you're not even good at it. Let's continue.
Presumably, your advice would be to avoid young white men because they perpetrate these massacres. But it won't be because they're white, right?
So are you playing dumb or are you actually dumb?
Maybe
it's
I'm
about
dumb.
proportionality.
Maybe I'm dumb.
You are because you're, well, I don't think you are dumb. I think you're smart actually, but you're deliberately avoiding per capita. And everybody knows that's the difference. What proportion of white men are school shooters? It's probably 0.00001%. What proportion
of black men are violent murderers? Well, the number I made up in my mind is 1 in 20.
of black men have committed violent crimes? It's probably like 5. 5%. I guess
Probably, you know, I saw it on X. Probably, dude. He is comparing school shootings to all violent crime. He's not comparing like what proportion of white people are responsible for all violent crime as opposed to the proportion of black men. And I'm sure, especially given like what violent crime is, which includes like, you know, aggravated assault and all manner of different thefts and whatnot. I'm sure that given the poverty element that we already talked about, if you make the proportionality argument, certainly the proportion of black people that are doing violent crime is going to be higher than the proportion of white people doing violent crime. There's more white people. White people are also in better material circumstances as opposed to black people in general. But once again, that is not a byproduct of genetic differences, and that is not a byproduct of cultural differences, but instead a byproduct of poverty. The argument Piers Morgan is making here, for the record, is actually a decent one. He's saying, well, you see a black person and you automatically assume that they're a criminal, but you don't see a white student going to school and automatically assume that they're a school shooter. That's what he's saying. He's trying to explain to Nick Fuentes why he's being racist. But Nick Fuentes is trying to move the conversation away to like these ridiculous false equivalencies.
I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but it's very high. And I would add to that, even as it concerns schools, why do you think parents pay a super high property tax to live in a school district where there's white people? Because they know that if they go to the black school, it's going to be the blood.
I like that he even factors in property tax into this equation, which is hilarious because like he also knows why schools in predominantly black neighborhoods are underfunded. That means he knows. He must know, right? I hope Piers Morgan knows.
And the Crips. It's going to be gangs. It's going to be, you know, you talk about school shootings. Nobody talks about all the school shootings that are committed by gangbangers in and around the school and all the other violence that's associated with that. I mean, these schools in the south side of Chicago, you know, it's just not livable.
I have an answer for you, Nick. So the proportion of the population who carry out mass shootings is actually the same for black and white.
For white people, the proportion of
the proportion
again,
of the population.
are you hearing it? No.
So I think the trouble with your statistics is a lot of them don't bear much scrutiny. We have a bunch of fact checkers checking all this in real time because you do have a tendency to just come out with a lot of old baloney. And when you say, you know, well, it's true. And when you're confronted with reality, you don't like it.
When I see a 20-year-old wearing a suit and tie saying gangbangers, like, how do you look at this goddamn nerd and go, that's my based heroic figure, dog? He's just afraid of black children. Most of his motivating principle comes from being afraid of black people. And he's not even embarrassed to admit that. He's a whole ass dweeb, dude. Did his first grade black friend bully him?
What's the figure? What proportion of white people have committed school shootings? With white people as the denominator and white people that have committed school shootings as the numerator, what's that percentage?
For both black and whites, the proportion of the population who carry out mass shootings generally is about the same.
No. Yet, tell me the number, and then
the only focus of your attention is the black shootings, the black crime. You don't want to live around black people. You want to avoid black people. You don't want interracial marriages or relationships that may produce black people. And yet, when I point out to you that there are many parts of crime in America where actually there's a majority of white people that perpetrate them, you don't care. You don't have any interest in that. It doesn't.
Piers is also identifying exactly what Nick Fuentes has been doing, which, you know, I guess he's not exactly sheltering his worldview here, but it's like, it's fine if white people do crimes. I just don't fuck with black people doing crimes is basically the take here.
Size your mind. Maybe
no one's buying this. This argument lost. No one is buying this. Everybody understands per capita, and people can even see what you race ahead and say, well, we're comparing the proportion of white and black school shooters. I said, no, compare the.
I can't believe Piers Morgan is kind of cooking him here. He's doing the thing where he's like trying to bring the conversation back. Like he is operating the per capita argument holds. Piers Morgan gave the per capita argument back to him about school shootings, right? Like the percentage of black people that are responsible for school shootings is the same. Like it's adjusted to the population pretty much, give or take. But he wants to compare like school shootings committed by white people across the entire board, like across the entire population of white people, as opposed to all violent crimes, not just gang violence, not just mass shootings in general, but all violent crimes, right? And you can't do that. That's an entirely separate statistic. And the reason why he's trying to do that is because he basically ran with that narrative in the beginning to say like, oh, it's a 1 in 20, 5% of black people do a violent crime, which is bullshit.
proportion of school shooters that are white versus violent criminals that are black? Because that was the basis of the monologue, is that you're very likely, if you encounter black people or a young black man in the city, that you're going to be the victim of a violent crime, of a robbery, a mugging, a car theft, a carjacking, or a murder. That's the difference, and it's about proportionality. And everybody sees past that because we all live in reality. You want to talk about product of your environment? People that live in New York, Chicago, LA, we live in reality. We live in this environment, and we see what it's like. And the threat, the danger, in terms of probability, it's not even comparable. And I would say this to your point. If you're in a high school and truly, if you see a white person who looks like a little autistic, he's got the SSRI stare and he reaches for a backpack, people joke and say, run. Similarly, if you see a jalopy pulling up with a bunch of black people in it and they got their pants around the ankles, you're going to run also. And I'm saying the same thing.
They got their pants around the ankles. Dude, the funniest part about people who try to make it seem like their racist politics are actually so new and so unique and so anti-establishment is that they end up sounding like people's grandparents. Like, how have you not figured out a new way to say racist shit? They're coming around with a jalopy with their pants around their ankles. Pick up your pants, please.
The difference is the latter happens much more often. It's much more common. You know, in Chicago, there's like 10,000 carjackings and car thefts every day. It's in the thousands. It happens all the time. How many mass shootings committed by autistic SSRI white people? I don't even know. I mean, it's probably in the single digits in the last decade in the city. That's the difference, and everybody knows that. But you're really just trying to carry water for liberal ideology. It's an ideological position.
I'm really not. I can absolutely say, yes, there is way too much black on black crime, for example, involving guns in Chicago.
And black and white also.
Yes, but there is way too much gun violence in Chicago. Right? I mean, it's indisputable. I've got no problem saying that. The difference is I don't then lead myself into a thought process where I have to avoid all black people in case they shoot me. And you've already...
Wait, why? I mean, if you don't understand that, you know, black on black crime and white on white crime is happening at the exact same levels because people end up doing crimes to their immediate neighbors first and foremost, then why wouldn't you be afraid? If you think black on black crime is far higher for some reason, then Nick Fuentes is honest and true. That's the limit with right-wingers talking to someone like Nick Fuentes. If Nick Fuentes wasn't so flustered in this moment, he would probably say as such. He'd be like, okay, well, you brought that up yourself. You agree with me. I'm just simply saying the quiet part out loud that you're too afraid to fucking admit.
Conceded that you are a racist. So when people hear you then say, I don't want to be living anywhere near black people, they already have heard you say, I'm a racist. So they assume you're doing that because of people's skin color. I don't think you would probably dispute that, right?
Well, you're separating two different things. The monologue, when I said I don't want to live around black people, that was after Irina Zarutska got shot. And it's true. I mean, they are a...
She didn't get shot. She got stabbed.
Largely.
Also, ironically enough, by a mentally ill person. So it's not just white people that seemingly do SSRI-born crimes in the way that you described school shootings. Turns out, you know, black people can also be mentally ill. But of course, because you're a white supremacist, when it's a mentally ill black person, that's because he's black. That's the difference. That's what it is. Yes, dude, there is a real problem with mental illness in this country, okay? That's the difference, though. When a black person who has significant mental health complications who ends up fucking snapping and doing something insane, like a horrifying act of violence, you know, you chalk that up as yet another instance of black crime. This is how they are. When a white person does it, you're like, well, the reason why the white person did it is because they were demonstrating antisocial personality disordered behavior.
In this city, in Chicago, the South Side, the West Side, huge criminal population, and I don't want to live anywhere near it. And I do. I want to live in a white neighborhood.
Huge criminal population. I wonder what he means.
I think that that's extremely desirable, and I think even black people.
Again, Nick, you're perfectly entitled to that view. But when you have obviously prefaced all this by saying, I am a racist, unashamedly, then people will assume that all your thought processes about all of these issues are driven by an aversion to people based on their skin color, which is the purest personification of racism.
It's not an aversion. I would say it's the opposite. I like my own people. My own people are familiar to me, and I think that's true across the board. I think that people seek out other people that are like themselves, and every other group does this, whether it's blacks, Hispanics, Asians. You know, I get a lot of attacks when I talk about that I'm against interracial marriage. And what's funny is that every other group is against interracial or interethnic marriage. Jews, Chinese, black people,
you're the product of an
Hispanics.
interracial marriage.
No! No! Oh, no! Hey, yo, chill. Look at his face. Hey, debunking. Guess what, dude? The fact checkers got you on that one, didn't they? Oh, no. Jesus Christ. Okay, this is so stupid. Every other race is against race mixing. With the exception of like Dr. Umar or whatever, I've never met a black person that has said that they need to make miscegenation illegal. The difference is there are certain groups of people in this country of every type of background that say, oh, you got to keep it in the family. You got to keep it in the family. I'm not one of those people. I think it's silly, whatever, right? But there's only one group of people that take it a step beyond and actually want to roll back the clock on how things used to be. And that is not even all white people, of course, obviously, but a specific kind of white person that says, we got to make it illegal. Like everyone has dating preferences. It's normal. It's healthy. It's understandable. Okay. Especially if you have, I guess, let's say, tasted the rainbow. Okay. And you've made up your mind on like what kind of person you enjoy being around.
Yeah, I mean, that's debatable.
Not
Let's say
really.
for the sake
Not
of argument,
really.
sure.
No, you're the product of an interracial marriage, and your father is part Mexican. You're literally,
For the sake of
you're
argument,
literally
we
the
can
very
say
person
sure.
you've just told me you want to avoid.
What race is Hispanic? Is that a race?
Well, what do you think it is?
I'm asking you, what race is Hispanic?
Hispanic. Of course it's a race. It's called Hispanic.
It's a mix between two races. It's a mix between indigenous Americans
It's not white,
and
though,
Europeans.
is it? It's not white.
Well, you're more of a racial purist than me. You got like
Not
a
really. You just keep saying.
Damn, get him, Piers. Yeah, tell him. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you're Hispanic.
You only want to live in a white neighborhood, but you're literally from a mixed race background yourself.
Hispanic
You've
and
literally
race, both of them are idiots. I know, but it's fun.
got Mexican blood.
I know, and I live in a non-white neighborhood too. I'm trying to get out of here, though. But I'm trying to get out. But here's the thing:
Do you have any non-white? Do you have any non-white friends? Genuine question.
Most of my friends are non-white. Most of my friends are not, and non-white people love my show.
How many are black? How many of your friends are black?
Many of them, like at least a dozen.
Wow.
Ye being one who you know, Sneeko being another who you also know.
Yeah. So how do they feel when you say?
Again, another limitation of the caucasity demonstrated by Piers Morgan. How many of your friends are black? It was like, this is such a dumb question. Name all your black friends right now. I like that he named two famously. Is Sneeko seriously black? I mean, he's Haitian. I think he's Haitian Filipino. But also, this is the dumbest argument. And his response literally is two white supremacist black people. At least, I don't know where they're at right now in their politics, but they were at some point when they were friends with Nick Fuentes.
You just want to be away from any black people. Walk away from them.
Well, you know what Ye told me? I'll tell you verbatim what he said. That it doesn't come from a place of, and you use the word aversion. That's the first thing
Wait, what just happened? I want to know what he said. Piers Morgan uncensored. Oh, he said the N-word? This is what he said.
You say you just want to be away from any black people.
I'll tell you verbatim what he said. He said, so you use the N-word. I said, yeah. He goes, well, when are being, I said, so true. That's so true. So they feel like they're in complete agreement with me. Place of, and you use the word aversion. That's the first thing I'll actually dispute.
Okay.
It's not an aversion on the basis of skin color, because that would seem to suggest it's like a stubborn, irrational bigotry. I don't consider myself a bigot. I consider myself a racial realist. I'm realistic about how the races are, and I speak provocatively about it. And I speak provocatively about our tribalistic instincts and tendencies as human beings. And I'm not a liberal ideologue that says that over time and with enough education, we're all going to see.
Here we go with white identitarian bullshit, dude. Oh my God. Even the races became woke, brother. What is happening? Oh, yeah. I'm not a bigot. I'm a race realist. Oh, I just want to save white people. Brr, brr, brr. White people are under attack. It's like the permanent victimhood narrative. I feel like that shit is also un-American. Like, yeah, there's always been that kind of motivating ideology amongst like some white people, right? But his loser shit, it's not a very American sentiment. I just want white people to have a safe space.
This great brotherhood where we're colorblind and everybody's the same. You know, I don't think that's ever going away. I think that race is real. It's not just skin deep. It matters to us and it matters to each other. And black people know that, and Hispanics know that, and Asians know that, and people like me that have partial Mexican ancestry, we know that too. And I think on that basis, we can have mutual respect and understanding, not aversion based on skin color.
The reason I use the word aversion is you literally said that you should walk the other way if you see black people. That is an aversion to black people based on their skin color.
No, that's called economy of information. That's economy of information. That's safety. And I said in the same monologue, if you watch it, it's like, I feel sorry. The problem is you clip the 10 seconds. I don't know if you watched the whole show, but in that monologue, I said, most black people are not violent or criminals. I said, and it's unfortunate that we're going to offend them when we turn and walk the other way. I said, but the problem is we don't know. We can't tell. And someone like Irina Zarutska, she sat down in front of a black man with her headphones in and wasn't paying attention because she was being a good liberal and said, I'm not uncomfortable by this. I'm progressive. Then she got stabbed in the neck. And I said, it's unfortunate that you would have to sit behind the black man.
The audacity of insane racists to literally victim blame a woman who got stabbed to death on a bus is psychotic, by the way. Like, that is psychotic. Like, she was too woke, too lip-tarded. That's why she got stabbed in the neck. What an insane thing to say.
To be safe, and if he's not violent or schizophrenic, he might be offended by that. I said, but I would rather offend him than to die.
How many deranged white men have committed atrocious acts of murder in the last 10 years in America?
By the way, there is a understandable and very real environment of fear that, women live in, right? When they're walking home alone at night. And these guys are the very same people that literally say, like, women need to get over that kind of fear, as a direct consequence of how much violence and, stalking and predatory behavior that women experience with regular frequency, much higher than the instance of like black on white crime that this dipshit is talking about here, and how normalized that sort of behavior is, and how a lot of men just don't even realize that they're doing it in many circumstances to be as charitable as possible in this circumstance. Like, it's just, many of them do know and they don't give a shit, obviously. Like, whether it be, a snide remark or whether it be just like following someone. Like, women are in a constant state of panic, especially at night when they're walking alone. That is the real, actual economy of information, right? That's the actual economy of information. But of course, when women bring that up, these are the first people to say, oh, you're ridiculous. You're imagining things. And yeah, that's just men across the board, not a specific race, obviously. He turns around and says, like, that's discrimination against men.
Proportionally far fewer. Far fewer.
How many? Do you know how many?
You have a research team. You pull it up. I don't have it in front of me.
You're obviously extremely exercised by that one story, which was horrific, for the record. Absolutely horrific, and should never have happened. The person who perpetrated that evil act had a string of previous offences and should have been picked up more, and it should have been amplified more. I completely concur with all of that. But I just suspect you have no idea how many white people have committed similar crimes, do you?
No, because I know it's far fewer from experience. Okay. Because it's like you said. Well, and hang on.
Such an omega ass take. You tell women not to be afraid of being assaulted, but you're afraid of some black kids. Yeah, exactly. No, that's what it is. He's like, black teenagers terrify me down to the bone. Do you understand? He's like, you don't understand. You don't know how terrifying it is, okay? You don't understand how terrifying it is to just walk by a gaggle of black teenagers. They might say something about my outfit. This is devastating to me personally, and I am so scared, okay? It's the economy of information. Every time he goes to like Costco or whatever and comes back home, he's like, wow, another day where I've avoided murder. It was crazy.
And I would add to that, Irina Zarutska wasn't the first one. That was also after Austin Metcalf was killed in Texas.
Sure.
After
Carmelo Anthony stabbed him in the neck. How many times has it been perpetrated by white people?
Well, hang on. Let me finish my point.
But you're implying that white people don't do this. And my point to you, Nick Fuentes, is of course.
I never said white people don't do it.
Of course, deranged white people commit heinous acts. But you don't either know.
No disagreement.
You neither know nor care, or maybe both. Maybe you do know but don't care. You only seem to be focused on black people who commit crimes. And again, if you hadn't prefaced the whole debate about racism by openly conceding you are a racist, I could read other connotations into what you've been saying. But once you've said, I'm a racist, and then you only talk about black crime, I think people can watch this and they can say, yeah, he's a racist. And everything that he says about crime is driven through the prism of being a racist who judges people according to their skin color.
Well, it's funny because it's quite on the contrary. And I said this in a similar monologue. The problem is not that I wake up and I walk down the street and I see someone that doesn't look like me and it makes me angry.
Sometimes I go back and forth on this. Because sometimes I feel like Piers is cooking him, and in other instances, almost feels like a Kanye West, Alex Jones type situation where he's like, "Don't say the quiet part out loud. What are you doing?" Like, I can't tell if Piers Morgan is telling him how to be better at doing like racist dog whistles, or if he actually has like a significant disagreement with what Nick Fuentes is saying and doing. Because it literally feels like he's like, well, I agree with you on some of these things, right? but you're saying you're racist. Don't concede on being racist from the start. You're doing a bad job. Reminder that Nick Fuentes is such a bitch-made pussycock about his views that when he was literally asked by a cop if he was a white supremacist, he said he wasn't. Yes. When asked by a cop if he was actually a white supremacist, Nick Fuentes said, no, I'm Mexican. My last name is Fuentes. He did do that. Yeah, that's on camera, body camera specifically.
The problem is there's a pattern of behavior, which we've all seen. Blacks in America have become narcissistic, and they become narcissistic because they've been told they're victims of racism, they're victims of slavery. They've been told, really, there's no accountability. If they're rude, if they're inconsiderate, if they're criminal, they are told that they have no agency for their actions. They're being told, if you act in this way, it's because the white...
Yeah, no, totally, dude. Like, this stuff sounds so stupid to me. I don't know. It's just like, that's how crime manifests because black people are narcissistic. Like, how stupid of an argument is this? When you actually try to whittle this argument down to its core, and what he has down there is basically, well, you know, black people are narcissistic because they've been told that they were victims of slavery, which they were generationally and historically. Is he a slavery didn't happen truther as well? Like, I don't know where he's coming from.
White man made you that way. It's because the system's rigged against you. And so we've been telling black people this for a generation, and now there's no rules. Now they go, and what we hate to see as decent people, not even as white people, but decent people, even black people too, what we hate to see is rudeness, obnoxiousness, inconsideration, criminality, violence. And that's that pattern of behavior that we see all over social media. On
so
the
just to
body
be clear,
cam footage,
you don't like black people who play the victim and are rude. Is that your position?
I don't like that pattern of behavior.
And who are narcissists?
I see where this is going.
Yeah, you're ahead of me.
Turn this around on me.
You're ahead of me, aren't you? Because when I said, what black friends have you got? You said,
I am kind of black, aren't I?
No, not that. You said, I'm not saying you. I'm just saying your choice of black friend is Ye, who is arguably the #1 black victimhood narcissist in America. Do you understand the problem? So he's
That's where you went with that, Piers? What the Are they having a meet-off? Like, what's going on? This is off the rails, bro. What the? Like, there is so much you can shit on, at least this version of Kanye West over. And he's like, he's basically calling him uppity. That's crazy. Like, that is crazy. Because that's what Nick was doing, right? Like, he's saying, you know, it's the classic, again, 1940s racism that he keeps bringing back for some weird reason, whether he's like talking about jalopies and you know, pants around their ankles, or how he's saying uppity, right? Like, that's what the argument is. It's a racialized term for those of you who don't know. You probably might not have heard it because most new age racists don't even say the term anymore. And it's crazy to me that Piers Morgan came in and was like, well, guess what? You know who's really uppity? Kanye West, which is crazy.
He's your friend. He's one of the very few black people you want to be associated with, but he's the epitome of what you just said you abhor about narcissistic black people.
I disagree. I disagree with you, and I'll tell you why. Because Ye, if you've ever met him in real life.
I have, yeah.
Nick Fuentes is saying all black people are narcissistic and you know, trying to reach above their station and don't know their place in civilized society because they're barbaric. You're turning around and saying, well, Kanye West is like that. Even if Kanye West is a narcissist, this is not the appropriate angle of attack here, because it almost comes across as you saying that Kanye West doesn't know his station.
Okay, well, then you know. He's nothing but polite, considerate.
Actually, he was very rude to me the last 2 times I interviewed him. He's a supreme narcissist, and he's also...
you keep interrupting me. You're very rude. Are you black? Because you're being very rude by interrupting me right now.
To you.
I'm giving you a hard time, but I do want to finish my point. I do want to finish my point about Ye. He is a guy who, when I was with him, wanted to make sure that everybody was heard. Everybody felt included. He's actually a very soft-spoken guy, very polite. And by the way, not violent. When you look at all the rappers that are in the music game, many of them, especially from Chicago, drill rap, they're talking about killing people, shooting people, they gangbang. He notably, if you know about him, he got his start because he was a nerd. He wore a backpack and a polo, and he wasn't a gangbanger. He rapped about his feelings and girls and his dreams and his ambitions. So no, and by the way, he would tell me all the time, he doesn't even feel black. They make him feel not black because he doesn't do those things, because he's soft-spoken, because he's artistic, because he's a bit of a nerd or likes fashion. So I would disagree. He's actually not like that at all. But we're talking
he's also a Hitler-loving anti-Semite. And we're going to take a little commercial break here, and we're going to come back and talk about anti-Semitism and your views about Jews. answered emphatically that you turned to anti-Semitism. In your interview with Stephen Crowder last week, you answered emphatically that you don't hate all Jews. Is that correct? That's your position?
Yes.
Okay. So I want to play you this clip.
Well, I don't hate any Jews. Let me just amend that. I don't hate any Jews.
Okay. Let's play this clip.
The reason I've had it is because my opposition to world Jewry and Israel is rooted in absolute, uncontestable fact. We have the truth on our side. That's why we're winning. Because we are telling the truth about the historical antagonism between Jews and Europeans, between Jews and Christians. The theological, historical, racial, cultural, and political antagonisms between organized Jewry and the Christians, organized Jewry and Europeans. And the reason that we are winning that argument is because it's real, it's true. I can prove it. I can show you. I can name the names. I can show you the paper trail, the money. That is why we're winning. That is why all of this is raising the consciousness.
When you say you have this opposition to world Jewry, I mean, it's one thing to criticize, for example, the Israeli government over what it's been doing in Gaza. I've done that myself. When you talk about world Jewry, I presume you're talking about the 15 million Jews in the world, and you are opposed to them. How does that square with your position that you don't hate any Jews?
Well, do you take issue with my use of the term world Jewry?
Well, what do you mean by that?
Or do you take issue with it? Do you have a problem with that?
Clarify what you mean by it.
Well, it's funny you bring that up. The gaslighting's crazy because I use that expression on my show all the time. I say organized Jewry, world Jewry. And do you know that for like 30 years, the World Jewish Congress has an annual keynote called the State of World Jewry? Barry Weiss has given it. You can look it up. It's on YouTube. She gives the State of World Jewry address.
But Nick, what do you mean by it?
I mean, you have to talk about, there's a concept of Jewish peoplehood. It's the sense that they are part of a common nationality, a common tribe, a common people. And so where they reside in Israel, the United States or Europe or elsewhere, they see each other above or maybe on a different level alongside their nationality, their state, wherever they reside. If they're in Germany, France, the United States, they see themselves as part of a transnational nation, of an international nation. The Jews in America, the Jews in Israel, they identify as Israeli or American, but they also have something in common. They identify as part of a common nation, which I would say there's a world Jewish population. It's world Jewry. And world Jewry has representatives. There is such a thing as the World Jewish Congress, where they actually elect, it's democratic, all the local Jewish organizations elect representatives to represent proportionally the Jewish population in their area at the World Jewish Congress. And it's sort of like Davos. It's like the World Economic Forum, but it's exclusively for members of the Jewish nation that exists across the world. And so that's a real thing. And I didn't make that up, and that didn't come from 4chan. It's like I said in that clip, I read what they write. I read their books. I watch these speeches. I watch a speech from Barry Weiss. I pay very close attention. So that's what I mean by that. There is such a thing as...
He's actually cooking up bullshit off the top of his head? No. Yes, world Jewry is both utilized by Nazis historically, but also is a real conference. He's not wrong about that. Like when someone uses Jewry, the Nazis have used the term international Jewry, world Jewry, but also it is a terminology that's also utilized by Jewish advocacy groups as well. Yeah, see, the State of World Jewry address by Barry Weiss. The inaugural State of World Jewry address was given in 1980 by Abba Eban. Over the 4 decades that followed, Eban's apocryphal speech was followed by those from luminaries, including Elie Wiesel, The reason why he is hyper focusing on the Jewish element is because he hates Jews. But the reason why that kind of statement is actually more salient now than ever before and invites scrutiny and skepticism is because most of these conferences, unfortunately, have actually revolved around defending Israel or have been attended by people who are ultra-Zionists. This does not mean that there is a monolithic understanding of Israel amongst the Jewish population, but that is what Nick Fuentes is claiming. And the biggest problem here is not just that Nick Fuentes is claiming this, but also a lot of Jewish Zionists will also say this as well, not realizing that that doesn't actually create an environment of protection against Israel, but instead makes people who are not as invested in the continuation of Israel as an apartheid state go, oh, that's weird.
It's a nation that exists across borders on a global scale. They're organized, and they have a national self-interest as that nation, as that tribe.
So if you don't hate any Jews, what do you like about them?
I like a lot of things about them. I think they're funny. I think they're smart. I think that they're pretty remarkable people. And as Christians, especially as Catholics, we say they're remarkable. And this has been adjudicated in Catholic doctrine for thousands of years. We say that they're a witness people. And so we actually, there's provisions inside of Catholic doctrine that says we need to give them special protections because they were a witness to Christ's passion. So, this is why you can't clip the show. You have to watch the whole thing. I say this repeatedly.
Oh, I actually love Jews. Source, La Bible. This kind of shit does make me unironically an r/Reddit atheist, bro. He's just like, yo, you don't understand. I love Jews. The Bible says we gotta love Jews. Catholics are mandated to love Jews is also funny, considering that until recently, Catholicism hadn't gotten the patch where it was like, hey, maybe we should stop saying Jews are Christ killers. That's a couple decades old, man. Saying that Catholics especially love Jews is crazy.
Interviews, I do think they're remarkable. By definition, they're exceptional people. It's just that there is a sort of natural opposition between them and Christians because of the theology. We believe that Christ is the Messiah. They don't. They have been a minority in Christian lands for thousands of years, and they have been pushed around and expelled, and they've been persecuted and segregated. And that's why there's a lot of paranoia. There's a lot of distrust. There's maybe some sense of chauvinism among Jewish people. So there is, like I said in that clip, there is an historical antagonism between these two peoples, between Christendom and Jewry, and that has always been the case in Europe. But I don't hate them, and I think I actually sort of understand them in a weird way. I think that because I've studied a lot of their politics, I think I really kind of know them in a way, and it doesn't come from a place of hatred.
Do you have any Jewish friends?
I do. I have many, yes.
Well, that's weird because you said this.
Jews and Christians have never been friends, ever. Not since Jesus Christ.
Oh, he got his ass. Oh, that was good. Listen. That's that classic nasty ass British journalist move right there. That was funny. That's a good clip. That's a good ass clip. Jesus Christ. Let's see what he
with
said.
The Pharisees. Have we ever been friends? Not since Saul was leading the charge persecuting the Christians. Not since the Roman Empire, not since the Middle Ages. Never. We've never been friends. We've never been allies. We've always been set against each other, actually. And even here in the United States, it was communist Jews who were the architects of both communism and the civil rights laws that are dispossessing white Christians of their land and civilization.
The Jews and Christians have never been friends ever, except for you and your Jewish friends.
Yeah, so easy. As peoples, as nations.
Got it.
Not saying every individual Christian, and of course there have been Christians and there have been Christian converts to Judaism, Jewish converts, Christian. You're nodding your head, but you're asking this. I'm saying as peoples, they've never been aligned.
I'm a Catholic like you, and I have many Jewish friends. I'm just trying to compute what you're trying to say, which is Jews and Christians have never been friends ever. And I'm like, well, you have Jewish friends, I have Jewish friends, we're both Catholics, therefore we're Christians. So it doesn't really quite add up.
Well, like I said, as peoples, there has been an historical antagonism as peoples. And you could even say the same about blacks in the United States. Of course, there were black and white people that were friendly with each other, but in many ways, they were set against each other as groups. And I think that's easy enough to understand.
The reason that many people think you're anti-Semitic is that you have regularly downplayed the Holocaust, and in particular, the number of Jewish people who were murdered by the Nazis. It's been said that you believe no more than several 100,000 have been killed. And I want to play you this clip.
People talk about, well, what about the gas chambers? Well, to the extent that that's real, I find that hard to believe, but to the extent that's real, there have been atrocities committed and genocides committed in all.
Wow, he's so woke. He's actually saying like the nobody cares about what King Leopold did. He's woke Fuentes, dude. Yeah, this is the new dark woke meta.
All times and all places. Let's acknowledge why Hitler casts the long shadow, because that confers a political benefit upon Jews. That's why.
It doesn't really sound correct to me. Wait a second. It takes 1 hour to cook a batch of cookies, and you have 15 ovens, probably in 4 different kitchens, right? Doing 24 hours a day, every day for 5 years. How long would it take you to make 6 million? I don't know. It certainly wouldn't be 5 years, right? The math doesn't seem to add up there.
You think that's funny?
It's funny. It's amusing what you're doing because, that one was a joke. But do you want to talk seriously about the Holocaust?
Yeah, I do, actually. I do, because I just find it extraordinary that you would think the Holocaust could ever be something that we could joke about.
Why? Too soon? Is it too soon to make jokes?
How many people do you think died in the Holocaust? How many Jewish people?
I don't know. I'm thinking maybe 7 million. What's the number? 6 million, something like that?
So
8 million?
You concede that 6 million Jews died in the Holocaust?
Possibly more. Possibly, we're discovering all the time. So it could maybe even be more than that.
So why have you doubted the numbers?
Yeah, he's doing a 6-7 meme, and you dumb are literally hitting it. And I mean, this is it. This is the whole point, right? When you argue and debate with fascists like and Holocaust revisionists and shit, they're going to have an entirely separate set of bullshit facts that they will draw from, and it's a deep well because there have been years and years, just like the Lost Cause, just like the Daughters of the Confederacy. They took that L and then they never let go of it. And for years and years and years, they concocted whatever narrative they could in an effort to downplay it. And also simultaneously, like, it's not as serious. If you're a Jewish person that's been taught about this, mechanized version of death that Jews experienced, and you have immediate relatives in your family that were around when that shit was happening still, it's going to obviously invoke a sense of emotion. But if you're a Nazi, you could just like joke around about it. It doesn't matter. And the moment that you can joke around about it and the other side can't because they take it, seriously, then you lost the argument technically because you got emotional.
In the past.
I'll tell you why. I really think that every death is a tragedy, however many Jewish people died in the Holocaust. And I'm not a World War II historian, so I'm actually open to believing the official narrative, and I've read some of the conspiracy theories. And to tell you the truth, it's a rigorous debate. But what's interesting about this is in many countries, it's not even legal to talk about it. And that's really where my interest in the Holocaust begins and sort of ends, to tell you the truth, is that if you wanted to question the number, you would be put in jail in about, 17 or 18 European countries. And I think that's really the more interesting conversation, which is that this is almost like a religious dogma in the West.
Yeah, he starts off with the debate. It's not a disputed fact. And then he brings it to an environment of censorship. And the reason why there is an environment of censorship around this sort of thing is because it was a telltale marker of fascism for the longest time, especially in countries that were destroyed by fascist movements. It's just a great way to figure out the canary in the coal mine. Although many of these previous ways of trying to suppress or cast aside growing fascist movements, many of the methods that were adopted were then also greatly abused to actively go after any kind of critic of Israel. And at this point, you arrive at someone like Nick Fuentes, who is now seen as like a sincere defender of Palestinians for this reason.
No other genocide, no other atrocity is treated like this. Could you imagine if in the United States they said the number of Palestinians killed in Gaza is 100,000, and if you don't say that, you're going to jail, you're banned on X, you can't have a job? That's the part that's totally insane. And a lot of people, they can't even make up their minds. I think it's actually done a disservice. If your goal, and I'm not saying you as Piers Morgan, but if you're an advocate for awareness about this, if your goal is to convince everybody that this is the way the Holocaust happened, I think the last thing you'd want to do is say that everyone that disagrees is in jail.
Yeah, notice how he doesn't talk about the other subsequent bans. There's a reason for that. Because he knows that argument is better for optics in general than to say, why can't I wear a swastika if I want to? Because those are the same reasons. Holocaust denial is censored for the exact same reason that wearing a swastika is censored. There is discourse around the Holocaust. You can engage in an academic debate even, okay? And many people do in colleges and in academic institutions and whatnot. There's a difference between that and outright Holocaust denial or Holocaust revisionism in the way that Nick Fuentes is doing, because he's signaling to his audience that he's a neo-Nazi. And while it is not illegal to do so in the United States of America, it is illegal in some European countries.
And is banned, and you're not allowed to say it. So there's really been no open debate about the subject since the scholarship started to be produced about 60 years ago.
But there is no debate to be had about the number of people who were murdered. Even the Nazis in the trials after the war confirmed the numbers. The amount of documentation that was recovered, notwithstanding the attempts by the Nazis to destroy it, the amount of documentation that was saved and preserved and used for trials and for historical record is unprecedented in the history of mass slaughter of human beings. So we have a very clear idea of how many people were gassed to death in the gas chambers. We have a very clear idea of how many were starved to death, were kept in ghettos, died of disease, of forced labor, of death marches. We know how many Jews were slaughtered. It's at least 6 million. What's interesting to me is that you appear to now concede that, which may be news to a lot of your regular viewers who have constantly heard you quibble with the number of Jews who died?
No, they don't care about ideological purity of this sort. Some might, but most of them don't. Most of them understand that you have to say those sorts of things when you go to mainstream media, and they don't even care whether it was like 6 million. They literally will say it didn't happen, but if it did, it was good, and actually more of it should happen. So for them, like, there is no such gotcha. There is no like ideological purity that you can try, like an ideological standard that you can bring forward here. And that's also another reason why, you know, arguing with Nazis is always a silly endeavor.
In the Holocaust. And for the record, just to confirm what I think you told me, you do now accept that at least 6 million Jews were killed in the Holocaust.
Well, no, I said it could even be higher than
well,
that.
It could be higher. That is
I think
true.
it's at least.
But you
I think you're
accept
right.
at least.
It is at least. Oh, it's at least 6 million. But
Okay.
it could be 100
well,
times
people
more
are
than
gonna
that.
be, okay, the people are going to be...
Yeah, see, he keeps like insincerely signaling, oh, no, it's even more than that. It's even more than that.
But let me respond to the rest of your question.
Sure.
What you're saying, I understand where you're coming from when you say it has been documented and there are confessions and so on. Let that speak for itself. But you don't see, you know, your show is called Piers Morgan Uncensored.
Yep.
But the United Kingdom is censored and Europe is censored. And if you talk about these things, you will be put in jail in many countries. And I think that's where a lot of people start to say, well, if the truth is so clear and if there's such overwhelming evidence, why do you need to throw people in jail for disagreeing? And you yourself said, well, there is no debate. I think everything is debatable. I think everything at least should be debated. And if the evidence is very one-sided, let the evidence speak. Don't throw people in jail. So do you think that Holocaust denial laws should be overturned?
I don't particularly agree with Holocaust denial laws. I don't think people should be imprisoned.
Okay.
Well, because I have a blanket view now, which has evolved slightly actually over the years, that I have a blanket view that speech should not be criminalized, right? People should be allowed to say what they want to say, and they should be then made accountable for what they say. If you have an employer, they can make a view about whether you are the right kind of person they want for their employment, as they would make a decision about anything else you do in life. So I actually believe that speech should never be criminalized. It's my personal view. I understand why in places like Germany, they have strong laws about it because they want to move on from what they believe was the most shameful moment in their history. I understand that. Do I want that in my country? No. Am I appalled by what has been going on with free speech in the United Kingdom in the last 2 or 3 years?
Matt Walsh asked Ben Shapiro if he could watch this video. Too soon killed me. Piers playing Nick's greatest hits and Nick sitting back like Kobe watching his own highlights. Lol. Piers not understanding per capita or Catholic doctrine was hilarious. I don't think he went the way that Piers hoped he would. Yeah, it's all overwhelmingly, I assume it's overwhelmingly brigaded.
It would be criminalized. It's my personal view.
Uncensored show, but they cut out what Kyan said. Piers pretending to know per capita will never not be, to not know per capita will never not be funny.
I understand why in places like Germany, they have strong laws about it because they want to move on from what they believe was the most shameful moment in their history. I understand that. Do I want that in my country? No. Am I appalled by what has been going on with free speech in the United Kingdom in the last 2 or 3 years? Absolutely. It is ridiculous that people have been frog marched to prison cells for stuff they put on social media. Right? So, yeah, I do. I think what is more interesting to me about our exchange is I was not expecting you to go the opposite way. I was not expecting you to be so emphatic that at least 6 million Jews died in the Holocaust. And there'll be people watching this who I think will be very surprised by that, because you have built a reputation for being, if not a Holocaust denier, then somebody constantly questioning in a downward way the number of Jews who were murdered. That doesn't appear to be what your position is now.
No, and here's what I would like to see for my entire career. When I started my show, it started with a good faith inquiry where I was questioning a lot of these narratives and I said, what is the answer on the other side? But what I found is that the answer was criminalized. So when you would talk about anything regarding Jews, Israel, the Holocaust, you could be in favor of the official narrative on those things. If you went against, you were banned, censored, and in some countries jailed. And so I actually haven't made up my mind on that because that's not really a matter of interest to me. And there's a lot of analysis and scholarship on both sides of the issue. And I've read both sides of the issue. And honestly, unfortunately, it's hard to judge because there has never been, there's never been a debate on it. And there's never been a debate because of the stigma, because of the censorship. And I think that leads a lot of people to say, well, what do they have to hide? Because you can say on your show, well, I'm personally against how.
Yeah, again, we've moved 18 goalposts away from like the real reason, the real ambition behind this. Oh, dude, he really cares about he really cares about everybody learning about the number of Jews that were killed in the Holocaust. That's why he's like, we shouldn't have an environment of censorship because otherwise people start questioning it. Like, we need to learn the nuance of Nazism. We need to learn the both sides in this. Yeah, I mean, I guess there is like at least some environment of fear still that he chooses to do this kind of thing instead of just like saying it with his whole ass chest.
Holocaust denial laws, yet they still persist and the social consequences still persist. And I think that is the anomaly. And people have to wonder, okay, why is it that way? And what I said in that clip is the reason the Holocaust casts a long shadow is because it confers a political benefit upon organized Jewry. That is what they always fall back on. They cannot be criticized. They cannot be named. They cannot be talked about, lest there be another Holocaust. And no other tragedy is treated that way. And no other ethnic group has a get out of jail free card. Just play that. Anti-Semitism and Holocaust. You can do whatever you want and defend all your actions. That's the part that people are getting upset with. That's the problem.
I don't know any right-minded person who believes that Jewish people weaponized the Holocaust for their own personal get out of jail free or whatever you called it.
You don't know anyone that does that? That believes that?
I'm sure there are some people that do that, but it's such a ridiculous generalization. You know, the truth is that most Jewish people have lost relatives in the Holocaust.
Bro, Israel being tied to Judaism, it was a ticking time bomb. Such arrogance to assume that this would not inevitably blow up in everybody's faces. What a gift to neo-Nazis like Nick Fuentes. Eventually, people were going to go, hey, this stuff is kind of crazy. You're doing like 17th century style sieges over here. We don't do this kind of stuff, especially not in broad daylight, and especially not with like the full purview and legal protection of the beautiful liberal Western world and Western society. We're supposed to be advanced. People were taught that this kind of stuff is unacceptable for the longest time, and people still do it. People still lean into it. It was, it's just anti-Semitism if you speak out against this. So now, people like Nick Fuentes, who despise Jewish people, can turn around and act as though they're simply talking about this from the point of view of criticizing Israel.
Of course. Stefan, I want to play you two clips. One is where you talk about Adolf Hitler.
Hitler was a pedophile and kind of a pagan. It's like, well, he was also really cool. So, time to grow up. We're not children anymore. Am I right? Am I right? Am I right, boys? Am I right? Let's go.
Do you regret saying that?
Saying a fact? No, that's absolutely true.
You think Hitler was very cool?
Yes, I do.
One of them.
And I'm tired of pretending he's not.
Well,
to be honest.
This is the problem, you see. It's a bit like when you just say, I'm a racist. You're a racist who thinks Hitler's cool, but you're not anti-Semitic. If you're a Jewish person watching this, what are they thinking? I'll tell you what they're thinking, because I've got a friend of mine called Danny Finkelstein, who, when he heard I was interviewing you, he's a Times journalist in the UK, very eminent journalist here, and author, who wrote a book about his own family's experiences at the hands of Hitler and Stalin, because you also told Tucker Carlson that you admire Stalin. But let's just take what Danny said here.
Hi Piers, it's Danny Finkelstein here. As you're interviewing Nick Fuentes, you might try suggesting to him that he reads my book, Hitler, Stalin, Mum and Dad. It's called Two Roads Home in the United States. Since he says he's on Team Hitler, you might like to ask him about the fact that Hitler arrested my mum, tried to starve my mum to death, did starve my grandmother to death, sent my great aunt to the gas chamber, my great uncle, my cousin.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to give a shit. I'm going to be honest. He is anti-Semitic, so he's going to be like...
My grandmother on my father's side ended up being one out of 7 children, the only one that survived the war. So you might ask him whether he wouldn't rather be on Team Mum rather than Team Hitler. And as for celebrating Stalin's birthday, well, Stalin took my father, sent him to a state collective farm, sent my grandmother and to a state collective farm, sent my grandfather to the Gulag. You might try asking him why he doesn't celebrate Dad's birthday rather than Stalin's. It may all be a big joke to him, but he complains that he was 18 when someone tried to cancel him. Well, Stalin and Hitler arrested my mum and my dad when they were 10 years old. So perhaps he might like to reconsider his joke.
See, that's the reality of...
It's crazy to assume that a straight up neo-Nazi is going to turn around and be like, oh my God, your feelings are hurt? That's crazy. He likes it, man. Yeah, say it to my face. Yeah, he will probably. This is quite literally the worst angle of attack here, okay?
Your jokes, although I haven't ascertained yet whether you are joking when you say that Hitler was very cool. Are you joking, or do you actually think he was the most genocidal monster of the last 150 years?
Directly.
Yeah, the thing is, my generation, we're just done with the pearl clutching. You
might be, but then your generation hasn't gone through what Danny Finkelstein's family went through. So maybe the pearl clutching has a way to go for families whose members
oh my gosh, yeah, we got all that. Me mom, like I don't even know who this person is. Why is this person talking to me? This old British guy is saying me mom got killed by Hitler.
Because he doesn't find it funny when you say Hitler's very fucking cool.
I don't care. I don't care.
I know you don't care. That's fine. You don't have to care. But he does care.
Does that guy care about America? Does that guy care about me and my country and my family? No.
He
The guy
cares what you,
that's
a
the
prominent
problem.
conservative in America, has to say about Adolf Hitler. And what do you mean by Hitler is very fucking cool? Because I think he's very fucking a monster.
Okay. And that's a clip. I think he's very fucking a monster. Do you hear yourself?
Yeah,
I mean,
do.
can we all grow up?
I do.
Can we all grow
He
up?
murdered
That
12
is just
million
childish.
people. He murdered 12 million
Okay.
people. What is very fucking cool about that? Tell me.
The edits, it's just cool. The uniforms, the parades, it's cool as a guy. You look at World War II and it's fascinating and it's interesting and it's compelling and it's cool. And, you know, we're just tired of saying these kinds of things. We want to talk like real people and give our honest opinions. And then we literally get.
I think saying, ha ha ha, that's a clip is way more cringe than him saying accidentally, he's very fucking a monster. Ha ha ha, that's a clip. Oh my God, dude.
An old Jewish guy from England who's going to say, oh, that's not very funny, mate. Me mom. And it's like, shut up. Like, you know, no one is in favor of genocide. So let's just get that out of the way. We're not in favor of a Holocaust or genocide.
Do you think if half your family
years
had been,
ago.
you think if half your family had been wiped out by very fucking cool Hitler, you'd still think he was very fucking cool? Or would you think that actually he was a despicable monster who murdered 12 million people, who targeted people because they were disabled or Jewish or Romani Gypsy or whatever it may be, and that he systematically destroyed people, incinerated them in gas chambers? Do you think that you would find it very fucking cool if your family had been through that? Or do you think you would find it very fucking disgusting? And perhaps moderate the number of times you laugh about it, or want to joke about it, or want to abuse someone like Danny Finkelstein, who's written incredibly powerful books about what happened to his extended family at the hands of the Nazis and your other hero, Stalin. See, my point to you, Nick Fuentes, is that in parts of this interview, you try to come across as moderate, but every now and again, the mask slips. And it slipped again here with what you say about Hitler. There's nothing very fucking cool about Hitler. We know that from history now. We know what.
I mean, what is the productivity of this conversation? You got him to like openly say he thinks Hitler is based and cool. You got him to do Holocaust revisionism. You got him to say that he's a racist. Like, it's just, I don't know. It's just confusing. You could have just like played his greatest hits on your own and just been like, this guy sucks, and be done with it. He's just sitting there and mocking you. It's great for his audience. But I do have to go right now because I have to do a photo shoot. And unfortunately, I have to leave you on that note. We didn't even get to finish this thing.